Welcome to The Profile. This is your host, Arif Anis Malik, and today we are having an exclusive session with a military historian, a think tanker, and a best-selling author and analyst, Colonel Azam Qadri. Welcome to The Profile.
Thank you so much.
In this program, we have the privilege of having Tariq Suleiman on board, who is another analyst and a think tanker from University of London School of Asian and African Studies. Today, in fact, we'll be discussing Colonel Qadri's lifetime achievements, his journey as a soldier through the ranks, making it to the senior ranks, then his participation in wars, in battles, in Afghan jihad, and then becoming a historiographer and an analyst and a researcher. Colonel Qadri is one of the most renowned names when it comes to understanding Pakistan military history. He has written extensively. He's author of 6 books. One of the book that's in my hands, that's Sentinels in the Sky. This one particularly narrates the daring battles led by Pakistan Air Force pilots, officers, and soldiers. Then we have another one, which is the new one, Heroes of Pakistan. This one narrates the stories of the most valiant ones, Nishan-e-Haider. So right now we have 10 Nishan-e-Haidars, 11 Nishan-e-Haidars, and this particular book narrates the amazing stories of those soldiers and officers who were able to achieve the biggest and the most notable mark after laying down their lives for Pakistan. And the third book, which is one of the bestsellers and the most recent one, this tells the story, in fact, of Major Shabir Sharif, another of Nishan-e-Haidars, and the title is What More Can a Soldier Desire? Now, we are going to, in fact, discuss these books and Colonel Saab's journey throughout in the last particularly 3 decades, and his contribution to understanding Pakistan military. I would request Tariq Suleiman to initiate the conversation, and we proceed.
Sure.
Colonel Saab, just the opening, what brought you in army? What interested you in army? Is that your family setup, which you seem to have just one option, that army was the only option? Or you had plenty of options and you chose army, that's where you wanted your career? How you ended up in army, which probably shaped your worldview after that?
Yeah, a good question. I'll share something very frankly with you, I would say, something which I've not divulged so far to many people. Basically, I come from a 4th generation military family. My maternal and paternal grandfathers were officers, grandfather, father. But when I was in the boarding school, my passion was not to go to the army. I wanted to be an engineer. And as a kid, I remember doing woodwork and making mechanos and these kind of things, which are more like something totally different to warring. But the year 1965, the war took place. And that's the time I changed my mind altogether, and I started thinking about going into the army. And I was still in pre-senior Cambridge when the war was on. And a lot of us volunteered to go and join the ranks, to fight side by side with the Pakistan Army, which was already taking part. My father was already involved in it. In fact, his war had started in August because he started his operations in Chamjodiya. The main operations of Pakistan Army and the war started on 6th of September. So I remember we were met by General Atikur Rahman, who was in General Headquarters, and he talked to us very nicely. He said, right now we need you to study, complete your education. When the time comes, we will get you on board. We'll get you into the army. Well, Tariq, that was, like a turning point of my thinking process from becoming an engineer, going to the army. And so much so, when I completed my education and I applied for the army, and I remember senior Cambridge exams were held in December, and I applied for the military. My result was to come in March or something. And when I went to get a provisional certificate from the principal, he refused to give it to me because he had intentions of bringing me to England for higher education. And he was resisting my joining the army because he'd seen a different mindset of mine in the past 5-6 years when I was a student. So, the transformation was kind of 65 was the turning point in my thinking and my decision to join Pakistan Army. And well, that is how my journey started. I applied for the regular course in 1966, and I was fortunate to have been selected, and I joined the 40th PMA long course in 67.
Thank you so much. That actually brings us to the next 4 decades long journey,
yes.
Which you served at various positions, various very important positions, and then you rose through the ranks. I'll be more interested, while Tariq will definitely ask you questions about your military, your stay in Pakistan military. I would be more interested you getting into the foray of research, thinking, analysis. Like thinking soldiers, that's kind of a rare breed when it comes to any military in the world. Same for Pakistan military as well. So one particular aspect about your books is that they are research based, which is itself kind of a rare phenomena, because in Pakistan we have so many books written on all these wars and all these heroes of Pakistan, but they are not research based. They are mainly these are the stories told to the readers in Urdu or English. So your books, they are distinct in their craft, in their taste, in their treatment. So when was the time when you actually started research, when you started taking research seriously, and you thought of becoming a writer, an author, and how the journey began?
Right. Now, basically, as far as writing is concerned, let me share with you, I was part of the Writers Club when I was in the school, and I used to write for the school magazine, even when I was a school kid. And when I joined the military, I started writing for the Armored Corps magazine called Sabre and Lance. That's the time when I was a young officer. I used to write. So I had something to do with writing all my life with me. Then I started writing for the Army Journal, which is more seasoned, more senior kind of.
Hilal and others?
Not the Army Journal, the Army Reviews. These are different magazines.
Yes.
I've never contributed to Hilal other than poetry I wrote on Shabir Sharif in the 70s. And it was an ode to Shabir Sharif. That poetry is now part of my book, which I've written on Shabir Sharif. So that's how it was. But as far as my how I became a writer, it was by default, I would say. I never planned to be a writer one day. It just so happened my mother died in 2002. When she passed away, I was trying to get her things sort of sorted out, and I came across one of my old attaché cases, which is like a briefcase these days. We used to have these two clips which used to open this thing attaché case, and when I opened it, there were old letters of my friends lying in the attache case. This attache case I had left behind when I went to the war in 71. So my belongings were lying with my parents at my parents' house. So when I opened that, I discovered some 40 to 50 letters which I had received from Shabir Sharif himself. And there were some letters, say, from Colonel Farooq. Now, Colonel Farooq was the Captain Farooq. Then he's the person who was responsible in the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in Bangladesh. His letters. There was another very dear friend of mine, Zakaullah Bangu, who is very well known in Pakistan Army aviation circles. He's a pioneer aviation pilot. He was a daredevil as far as going into CHN and all the difficult rescue missions. He was always there, and he was a VVIP pilot to people from Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to right up to Benazir and Musharraf. So he'd been doing a lot of flying. So his letters are also there, which he wrote to me from prison when he was a prisoner of war. So when I looked at Shabir Sharif's letter, I put all these letters in a kind of a diary. So I used to keep them as, relics, as souvenirs of your friends writing to you. So some of the letters when I was reading, I was kind of tearful, because they were talking of the times which I and Shabir had as young officers. So that's the time I decided to write a book on Shabir Sharif. That's the beginning, that's the start point. And the book, when it started, I'd called it Shabir as I knew him. It wasn't called What More Can a Soldier Desire. What More Can a Soldier Desire was the name of the poetry which I had written on Shabir Sharif covering his life. So when the book was finished, I shared it with General Rahil Sharif, and General Rahil Sharif was commandant at the military academy at 2-star at that time. And he'd taken it to General Kiani to have it launched from him. And General Kiani kept it for 2 or 3 months, and then one day I got a call from him telling me that, look, Shabir Sharif is a hero, is a national hero. So you've written a beautiful book on him, but that's more personal between you and him. It highlights his qualities, but as a hero, we need to know more about him, what he did in 65 war and what he did in 71 war. So for that I said, sir, I'm willing to work on that, but you'll need to give me help because all that happened is in the military records. So we'll have to get this from you, and I'll need assistance. He says, no issues, General Rahil will help you on this. And from that point onwards, it took us almost 2 years between me and General Rahil. We were almost every week together, and he helped me put all facts and figures, all the whatever we need to get together for the book, and we were able to complete this book. So when this book was completed, I also did not know how much of a success this book would be, because I got a very good response from everybody, and particularly the Jawans of 6FF, who told me to also have it translated in Urdu so they could also read it. So that's how I got it translated in Urdu, and I had it Urdu translation done for some very professional people, and that is how we did it. I later on followed it up by, when I was encouraged so much, by deciding to write about other heroes of Pakistan. And that's where I wrote to the service chiefs, the director generals of the Rangers, the Scouts, and I got a very good response from the Air Force. The first to come to me was the Air Chief. That is where book number 3, which is Sentinels in the Sky. Now this book I want to share with you is a book which involves the 100 heroes of the Air Force who were decorated for valor from 1948, when we had only one star Jurat, with Flight Lieutenant Dogar, who became an Air Commodore later on. And then we covered all the heroes in the 65 war, the 71 war, and all the pilots who took part in the Arab-Israeli war. And you'll be pleased to know that there are Pakistani pilots who are the only ones who have shot down Israeli aircrafts. So those people are also the only ones. And that's a great feat, because the Israeli pilots were considered to be among the best. And of course now there's no doubt about it, our Air Force has always been really good and one of the best, and it still is. So to do the work on this book, I was invited by the Air Chief, at that time Air Chief Marshal Tahir Rafiq Bhatt, who had me over in the Air Headquarters, and we had coffee together, and he said, first of all, he asked me, what's your motivation to write about Air Force heroes? I said, well, I'm writing about all the heroes, and I think 65 war and 71 war, a lot of credit goes to the Pakistan Air Force, which saved the day for Pakistan. It saved Pakistan. And he put a serving air marshal with a couple of other officers at my disposal to help me, assist me in doing all the homework. And then I was given all the assistance to travel to meet people. And from Karachi to Peshawar, I went to meet each one of these people individually. And what came out was so interesting. Those pictures came out which nobody had seen before, which were lying with the individual officers or the families. When the book was completed, I remember Hamid Mir called me and he said, your book is being launched, I want to write a supplement in the newspapers. Whom do I write about? I said, give me a night, I'll send you an email in the morning. In the morning he calls me, he says, you've written something about Flight Lieutenant Murtaza. Who is this person? I said, did you read the whole article? You see, हम लोग शक्ल को देखते हैं, अंदर नहीं. अभी MM आलिम साहब को सब जानते हैं, रफीकी साहब को जानते हैं, Cecil, everybody knows them, but nobody knows Murtaza. The interesting thing was, in case of Murtaza, when we went to meet his family, उनकी बेगम साहिबा, she was kind of tearful, रो रही थी. शुक्र है कोई पूछने के लिए आया.
Kind of lost and forgotten.
इतने साल से भूले हुए थे. So anyway, you know, and she came up with something amazing. She says that when he did not come back, now Murtaza's aircraft was shot down near Ajmer, and his pilot died during the crash, and he was injured when he landed.
So he was a co-pilot.
He was a navigator.
A navigator.
So he was in the hospital for 3-4 days, and then he passed away. So the wife did not know whether he's Shaheed or is a prisoner of war. So she wrote to Indira Gandhi. Red Cross ke through she sent a letter, and she got a response. And the response carried pictures of his being buried in the hut of Nizamuddin Aulia's shrine with the Pakistani flag over his coffin and his body being lowered in the grave. All those pictures which are unbelievable. And the kind of burial he got, I mean, hats off to the Indians that they gave an enemy fighter pilot,
yes,
or
a well-deserved burial.
A well-deserved burial, which is praiseworthy. And that is where, you know, I told Hamid he must put that in the newspaper so that our people should know, one, about the greatness of this person, two, about the greatness of the enemy, that, you know, the way they were able to look after him after his death. So what followed later on was more interesting. My same article about the same book was published in Indian newspapers, in 23 different newspapers. And one day, one of the ex-air chiefs, he called Hamid Mir that I want the colonel's phone number. I want to talk to him. So when Hamid called me, he says, this air marshal wants to talk to you. Can I give him your number? I told him I have his number, but I'll have to ask him first, and then I said, by all means, I'm writing about heroes, and I'll be visiting in India soon to meet people, also to write my accounts on the battles that I'm writing about. So he called me and he said, you have done something great, which, you know, we are quoting as example. So then I told him, okay, look, I want to share something with you also. I said, I captured 2 pilots of the Indian Air Force who were downed over Zafarwal on 2 different dates, 16th and 17th. And in both the cases, before I could reach them or anybody could reach them, villagers had got to them and they were going to kill them, you know, by sticks and things like that. And I rescued them and I gave them the best of treatment I could. Give them warm clothing, give them coffee and tea, give them food, and I kept them with me till such time I could send them back safely. So it's not that, you know, we are also like that. They were prisoners of war and we treated them very, very well. So those are the ethics, I would say, we talk about. So we're talking about this book, the Air Force book, that way is again very interesting. I would say that I'm proud to say that I've been able to document the deeds of these 100 people, their accounts in this book, which our future generations can read about and they can know what's been going on. The book on Nishani Haidars. Now we're talking about those figures of 10, 11. They were 10 all along. The 11th was my discovery, and that was this person was Azad Kashmir Regiment, Saif, Naik Saif. This person had been given Hilali Kashmir in 48,
Which is equivalent.
which is equivalent of a Nishani Haidar. And in 1995, a notification was given by the government of Pakistan, but nobody got it endorsed into a Nishani Haidar or got it converted or get him recognized that way. I was able to do that, and when I was writing this book, I put his account in the same book. And because of that, the Azad Kashmir Regimental Center, which did not have a Nishani Haidar so far, the commandant called me up and he said, "We are honored, we are so happy that otherwise, Shabir is from Frontier Force, Major Akram, Frontier Force, Punjab Regiment, Bhatti, Mahfouz from Punjab Regiment, everybody, all regiments, but nobody was from Azad Kashmir Regiment." So we were able to give him his due place, and I've given him a seniority where he was by dates, chronologically where he stands. He should be given a standing like that rather than putting his name at the end.
Yeah.
If you see his place in the book and you see his picture in the 11 Nishani Haidars, I'm very happy he belongs there and everybody knows about him. So that is how it is.
It's a very great job, Colonel Saab. But I'll bring you back to my initial question of your decision that your principal didn't want you to go to army, and you yourself had different designs, and you ended up in army. Now my question is, how much life in the army has shaped your worldview?
Okay.
Now let me qualify it with what exactly I mean by that. That any institution, let alone army, any institution, they have their own very single-dimensional ethos. They're like a family. They're like one clan. They have loyalty, discipline. In that perspective, when we look at the same institution critically, we are obviously biased. We have our sympathies for them. You started researching that institution. You started correcting some wrongs as well along the way. Do you think that you already had that critical thing that you were planning to go fly away from that nest of soldiers and that family that was somewhere inside you? If you had made that decision at that time not to go army, you might have become academic scholar or something. Something like that. So how much army still impedes, occludes, or limits your that academic research which you are putting into that research you are doing currently?
I think it doesn't impede what I would say my military career helped me shape my direction. You see, once I joined the army, for me, army was a way of life.
That's exactly my mean.
And do you know,
yes.
when I landed up in the military academy, I was among the top cadets at that time competing for Sandest. And from our course, it was Aziz Bhatti's son, Zafar Bhatti, who was selected, and we had no grudges. He was Aziz Bhatti's son. I was among the top cadets when I joined the military academy because of my background. I'm from Lawrence College, and we being on the hills, really had to work ourselves out, and we were all good in sports. I was a long distance athlete, and I was a tennis player in the college team, played cricket, played hockey, football, you name it. I was playing all the sports. So that gave me an edge when I was in the military academy, because being a sportsman, being physically fit, it's an advantage basically. So if you just keep your head in its place, you can walk through. I personally feel anybody can go through it. So, but this regimentation which came into me, which would not have come into me if I was on another path in life, gave me a certain direction. And the experience that I got, that I gained, helped me with this work that I'm doing now, basically.
If I can interrupt just
Yeah.
for 1 second, that's exactly my point. That single direction which it gave you.
Yes.
The other side, if you had gone into any other way, you might have plurality and multiplicity of different directions, and you're coping with that. That has its own edge,
I know.
which makes you even critical of your own actions. But when
Absolutely.
you have a very single-minded direction, it sometimes impedes your mental development to
I
that
understand.
extent,
I understand.
where you can criticize your own fellow officers,
Yes,
even
yes,
if they
yes,
got
yes.
deservedly
Yes, yes.
awards and Nishane-Haider and all these things. You still are capable of looking at them from that critical
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
what I meant.
You're absolutely right. And when even I was doing these 11, Nishane had this. I had my own judgment too when we're talking of, I'm doing the Air Force ones also similarly. So one has its perspective. But what I have gained now, which will eventually help me in my future work, is my findings about the Pakistan Army from the partition till now. A lot of things which people don't know about are the things which I'm going to be bringing in the books that I'm in the process. I'm not even saying starting or something. I'm in the process of finishing at different stages. There's 6 or 7 books which are in my system already. So
Good.
you'll be hearing.
This is something I'll be picking on, Colonel Qadri. When it comes to Pakistan military, is one of the most interesting subjects. We have an army which is, when I say Pakistan military, though we understand it is Pakistan Army, Air Force and Navy, but we clearly understand that this is the Pakistan Army which mainly holds the larger control in the sphere. So this is a military force which is, in fact, when we look at the last 67 years journey, which has fought wars, which has won wars, which was defeated in one, which surrendered in 1971. Then this is a military force which, in fact, staged coups, martial laws, and we have 4 different military rulers who defined Pakistan and who contributed to what Pakistan is today. At the same time, there came a critical time when the same military force was kind of, I wouldn't say hated, but certainly became a bone of contention. At the same time, right now, when we look at the current situation, most of the surveys tell us Pakistan military, Pakistan Army is one of the most trusted and loved institutions, and its Chief of Army Staff, in fact, has more approval ratings compared to any politicians. So Pakistan military is a very interesting phenomena, and the whole world tries to understand it, because this is a military which has nuclear arsenals, in fact, and once again one of the top 10 military forces in terms of skills, in terms of impact, in terms of power. So there are different historians, Stephen Cohen from the USA and several British historians and writers. They try to demystify Pakistan military. As a soldier yourself, and as a published author, as a researcher, could you share some 5 different ways or the secrets through which the rest of the world could demystify or understand Pakistan military? Say those 5 things which, as a researcher, you believe if anyone, as an outsider, looks at Pakistan military and tries to decipher them through these 5 lenses, would be able to understand the genesis or the core or the heart of Pakistan military.
You want me to tell you about 5 things through which
help us
identifies
understand what Pakistan military is actually, looking at its impact in shaping of Pakistan, at politics as a regional force itself, and at the same time as one of the most established institutions in Pakistan, and to some extent controversial, and at the same time much loved at the same time. So 5 things which actually help us understand what Pakistan military is and its role in the future.
Now, the point is this: if you go back to the history of Pakistan from 1947 onwards, Pakistan Army has played a balancing act till today, right now. Even now, the balancing act has been played by Pakistan Army, not only in Azam or something, but overall Pakistan control is, with the Pakistan Army. Basically, it's because of it's a disciplined body. Unlike others, I'm not running down anybody else, but what I'm saying is everything is like systemized, everything is disciplined. So that discipline which is ingrained into the system, that is something which is not so prone to failure as the other things would be. So that is one which is the glaring this thing. The other thing is in the military is the leadership. So whosoever is the top, it's not a democracy. Anybody who's running the show, he carries the day, and everyone accepts him. Yesterday was Musharraf, then was Kiani, today is Rahil. Everyone followed these people, wrong or right. So it's the next thing is the leadership, the discipline, the leadership, and the other thing is, I think there's greater motivation in them than anything else for the nation. I've not seen that kind of a thing in anybody else. A man on 25,000 feet, a place like Siachen, or anywhere else you put him, he's put on duty, he's there on duty without question, he doesn't ask anything. So it's I think, which is again, I've not seen it in any other organization. The other thing is faith in Allah, or faith in God. I've been in all walks of life. I'm part of the system as a Pakistani, and the faith that I've seen in the armed forces, I would not only call it army, it's in all the armed forces, by the way. We have excellent Air Force, excellent Navy. Looking at the coastlines of Pakistan, huge coastlines, to defend an area like that with a small Navy, Indians are 10 times bigger than you are. But it's creditable. So it's just question of, faith in God and the professionalism that they are conducting. And it's this thing. And you'll find them praying in those situations. The faith in Allah which keeps them going, and the faith in Allah telling them if they go, they'll be shaheeds. If they survive, they'll be ghazis. This is the biggest incentive any soldier in uniform has. So that comes inbuilt to them. So I think generally speaking, those are the main
I think in the end, probably if you can just share that, what makes Pakistan military unique compared to other military forces in the world?
Yeah. Do you know, recently, I'll be very proud and happy to share something with you. You probably be knowing, but even if you don't, and maybe the people who are watching this, for the last 3 years, Pakistan Army's patrols, when there are patrols from all over the world participating, have been winning the first position, which includes all the world armies. Now, patrols are led by young officers, captains and lieutenants, a platoon size, which goes and participates in various activities which are tailored to check out everybody, and we've been getting it going. Our chief, since the time Rahil became the army chief, has been rated as #1 general in the world. You talk to anybody in the other armed forces, the kind of respect the Pakistan Army enjoys, that's heartwarming, let me tell you. When I meet other people, other armies, people, they have a lot of praise for us. And that is because we've been throughout in conflicts. We've been engaged in some form of threat or the other, be it on the Western Front, be it terrorism, be it, internal situation. Now look at what Rahil is going through. General Rahil, hats off to him. Zarbiaz is only one. We have an active Afghan border, the whole of Durand line. We've been having skirmishes even on the Iranian borders. Indians. We have a battle going on with the militants inside Sindh, inside Punjab. Look at where all the army is going, and the army is the same army is being, and people have been going over and over and over and again in the op area. Normally this used to be given a duty, you go for a few years and then you go and rest. But here the guys are continuously working. So I think this is what makes it very, very unique and very special. It's not like anywhere else in the world. The other thing is, if anybody talks of American forces or German forces or British forces, the concepts. If they were to go into Afghanistan, Americans started shelling and all those intercontinental ballistic missiles and air raids and utterly shelling and everything, and then the soldiers come in. Whereas our soldiers are there where the action is, they are right into the action. You mean to say we can start bombarding cities where militants are hiding? They clear the area first and then the army will move in. Army is there when there is an issue, they'll be right there. Now there's a place attacked, and the militants are inside GHQ. Our people are confronting them there. If there's a base which has been attacked, an airport's been attacked, our people were there, confronting them like it's face-to-face kind of a thing. So they hardened, war-hardened, battle-hardened, which I don't think any other army in the world can boast that, I would say.
At the same time, I would be actually carrying on, and then we'll be coming to Tariq. When you just mentioned, if you're having hot Iranian borders, Western borders, Afghanistan borders, similarly the kind of situation, then it also brings up another question, that no military is big enough, or large enough, or powerful enough actually to set all these things right.
Absolutely.
And then probably we need to look at the diplomacy, the power, and the prospects it might have. So, because if we can actually exhaust our resources and our army and our personnel during this entire effort, if we are all spread, and at the same time Pakistan has limited resources. So from that aspect, as you consider yourself, and aptly by your friends as well at the United Nations, a peace ambassador, so that is another shade of your life. So how do you see Pakistan military actually contributing towards the peace initiatives? Because it is also believed that Pakistan's foreign policy or diplomacy is actually run by Pakistan military, sometimes from the front, sometimes from the back. So from that aspect, how do you look at Pakistan military in this particular initiative?
Basically, the foreign policy remains the domain of the Prime Minister or the government. There's very little, but of course there is always the input from the armed forces also. Your question was very correctly directed. Looking at all these issues would not be issues if our foreign policies were right at a national level. The root cause, or I would say the victims, I would say we are the victims of the international conspiracies. Now, when I was doing the research on 9/11, I'm saying a few things maybe prematurely, but I discovered a lot of things where people should not have ever been involved in this issue. This was somebody else's war. Pakistan had nothing to do with this. We got embroiled in this thing. And then later on, whatever went on, the fallout was in Pakistan because we were involved in this kind of a conflict.
Are you saying that Pakistan's involvement in Afghanistan was
Absolutely, it was wrong.
Wrong.
Absolutely
but
wrong.
That decision was made by.
I know it was made by us. I know by the army. General Musharraf made the decision, But you look at it in hindsight.
General Zia made the decision
No,
even
no.
before that. I mean,
No,
going
that
into
was when
those-
we got involved in with the Russians, of course.
But that was the natural corollary of the Russian involvement.
I know,
which,
but
which
this
came back.
9/11 had nothing to do with the Russian invasion. I was part of that directly. I know what went on there. We were supporting liberating Afghanistan from the Russians. That was something different. But see, what happened? Our allies basically were called Mujahideens at that time. Later on became Taliban, because once the Russians went out, there were these different groups, and among them the major group which came up successful and ruled Afghanistan, and they were called the Taliban. They were our allies. We worked with them. Americans were also working with them. The other countries, 38 Islamic nations, were helping the Afghans at that time in the jihad, in the Afghan jihad against the Russians. But the fact remains, when this thing happened, it was all over. 9/11 was a totally different creation. It was because Osama bin Laden was on the hit list of the Americans for various reasons. Al-Qaeda. So Americans took this as an excuse to get into Afghanistan, saying Al-Qaeda has done 9/11 and Osama bin Laden is the leader, so we have to go for him. Either he should be handed over or we'll go. The fact remains, there is no proof of 9/11 that Al-Qaeda did this thing. Has it ever been proven anywhere? And even if it was proven, who authorizes another country to come and invade another country, another sovereign state, the way Americans did it, the way Americans are doing it elsewhere in the world? Who has given them the authority to do that? So, but whatever happened, we had to, like Mr. Bush said, you're either with us or you're against us. He made that speech after 9/11. And General Musharraf, despite his reservations, I tell you, most of his chiefs, the senior officers that time with him, they were against it. The DGISI, General Usmani was against it, General Mahmood was against it. They were all not for it. And even General Musharraf initially did not want to go for this. It was not our war. But it got thrusted on us, and then there was no way out. But whatever happened, the backlash or the fallout is something which we are facing through these attacks on schools, on buildings, and people getting killed, and we are still trying to clear the mess in the frontier.
That's quite controversial issue you are raising. Probably that will take us in a different direction. If I could
Sure.
Take you back on the issue of thinking soldiers,
Okay.
which seems a contradiction in itself,
Yeah.
in a way that the way you explained the Pakistan Army's salient features, except one probably balancing act, rest I could see in other armies as well, especially my area of interest is Israel-Palestine conflict, and Israel Defense Forces have got most of these qualities are salient features. Two areas which I wanted to highlight. One is that in Israel Defense Forces, when we look at it, we see from soldiers to generals dissenting on different issues. They take up issues and they debate that. When soldiers refuse to serve in particular order they've been given, they get sentenced. They are, and now a whole new movement which is called silencing the voice or silencing. It's related to the army soldiers, officers, different ranks who are being silenced on certain issues, and they raise this. Pakistan Army does not seem to have any dissenting voice, which means that either there's something wrong, because human organization can never be perfect. There has to be some issue at some stage, wherever it is. So that not leaving any room for that dissent, or not creating any space for dissent, is where that mental creativity which I was talking about earlier gets squashed. So there is no possibility of us expecting that any investigation coming from the army will be the investigation which could bring unbiased results or bring those. So in that context, I would say, do you think that that balancing act is the one issue which has probably, which is salient feature according to you, which has marred that character of that army, which has infected army with that particular disciplinary mode, which is
what I would like to say, basically we kind of inherited British past, which was an army which was colonial, which was not democratic in nature. And probably that is the reason that why we've been able to go on the way we are going today and the system exists. And let me assure you, these dissensions did come in. Some of them came in through Islamic people who were a little more diehard. Some came even during the time of Musharraf, people who put on trial because they were against whatever is going on in the war against terror. People did, and there were some senior officers involved in it. And there have been different occasions, number of them, which are probably not known. Some get known also, that these kind of things have been happening. But basically the strength, or why the system, army as an institution has survived, is because it's not a democratic institution. That is the reason. I'll go to Israel. You're trying to draw some comparison. I'm a very ardent admirer of Israelis. Israelis may be our enemies on ideology or on a lot of things, but a lot of things I appreciate, I like the way they are. First of all, they have the best mobilization system. They don't have a large standing army, but when the time comes, when they need an army, a large army, their army can be many times more than a standing army. And in addition to that, they are a highly professional army. In all the walks of life, these guys are skilled, they know their job, they know their act. And one of the favorite generals of mine in the last couple of years was Sharon. The kind of feats he put circles.
As well.
He put circles around the Arabs. So many, small countries surrounded by so many countries, and look at the way he led his armed forces. Tremendous person. So it's not that I've got something against them or something, but for them survival is through militarization, and that comes through mobilization. Every man, every person, every able-bodied person is a soldier. And everyone in some form or the other, be it a driver, be it a pilot, be it anything, everyone participates. And if they were not doing it, they would not survive a day. It's another thing. It goes to their favor. That Syria is in turmoil. Iraq is gone. Jordan is it's neutralized. So all these countries have kind of been neutralized. Had they been the original form, as they were before, then they would have a tough time. And the only thing which has happened in the past is Hezbollah, which has stood up to them to a certain level. Otherwise, they have no challenges. But unlike them, we have challenges all the time.
Qadri, now we'll keep this conversation going, but just to sum this part up, the last question of tonight's program, it's about you becoming a peace ambassador. So, which is kind of a dichotomy and a paradox. But how do you feel when you speak at the United Nations, when you speak at other important forums, including the forum you'll be speaking tonight, where you speak to impact makers, opinion makers, media persons, and where you influence their opinions? How do you see carrying this aspect of your life forward? And what do you think, which one of the two is going to win? The peace side or the war side?
Yeah.
Because these are two things which would be happening continuously, though they say sometimes peace is sometime the gap in between two wars. So what this world is heading towards, and how you and others, those who are the peacemakers and peace lovers, how can they play their role in making this world a beautiful place?
Yeah. Let me share something with you. happened to see the funeral ceremony of they had a reception for Muhammad Ali, the boxer. If you haven't seen it from beginning to the end, if you see that, you'll get to know what I'm trying to do. Basically, the highlights of that were there were two rabbis, Jewish rabbis. They were invited to come and speak about it, and they were talking about exactly what I'm going to talk to you now, about peace amongst communities, peace amongst religions, peace in the world. And I would say, rather than investing in weapons, weapons investment or the business with selling weaponry is very paying. But I would say, rather than investing in this, investment in peace should be the order of the day. United Nations should be working towards bringing communities together to resolve conflicts, to resolve differences amongst people. There's too much of hate today, which has never existed before. All these shootouts you see or killings you see, what is behind all this is hate. In some form or the other, be it color, creed, religion, whatever it is, it's hate. And I think the superpowers, the larger nations, the people who have influence, people who have money, it's their responsibility, greater responsibility to step into this way and show the path. And I was very happy to hear Bill Clinton also talking on the same thing. If you listen to Billy Crystal, he was talking on the same thing. And this other rabbi, I'm forgetting his name, tremendous person. His speech is now coming on YouTube. Everyone is watching it.
Sharing it, yeah.
When I go down, and I was in New York, would you believe it, I was invited to a synagogue. How much we hate Israelis, how much we hate the Jewish. If Pakistan Army knew I was visiting a synagogue in New York, they'd probably be thinking, what the hell is this gone wrong with him? Not only that, I was repeatedly invited on 3 consecutive Saturdays, and I loved being with them. I've been to a Buddhist church, I've been to the Hindu temples. I'm on the friend list of the Hindu Yoga, the World Yoga Organization. I was given an award by them.
Is it because you're getting old, or you're changing your mind?
No, it's not because. No, it's not that. The thing is, I feel from my heart, I'm 4th generation military. I've seen conflicts. I've seen comrades dying next to me. A person like that would probably never think of peace. But I personally think peace is the ultimate thing. We all have to go for that. And I think I'm in a better position to talk about peace, being a military person, than I think you would be talking about peace. Probably will not make sense, because I can convince you better to talk about peace than anybody else.
Thank you so much indeed. And yes, when we are finishing it, winding it up on this pleasant note, the peace is the future. The peace is where we all need to work towards. Thank you very much, Colonel Qadri and Tariq Suleiman. It has been a tremendous evening together, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue towards building this world a better place together. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you.